All right. Well, hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of All Things Skin podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to join us today. And I'm so thrilled to be chatting today with Stephanie Venn-Watson. She is the CEO and co founder of Fatty15. And it's a really wonderfully named product. I love the name, first of all, Steph. Fatty15. It just gets so much attention. And it's beautifully packaged. It's just it's an eye catcher, and it's a conversation starter, just the name. So thanks for joining us today, Steph.
Oh, Dr. Missy, it's a pleasure to be here.
So thrilled to have you. So just for our listeners, just to kind of get into it, what exactly is Fatty 15?
Sure. So, Fatty 15 contains just one ingredient, and that is C15, which probably a lot of people haven't heard of, right? So, C15, the fancy name for it is pentadecanoic acid, and it is the first essential fatty acid to be discovered in over 90 years since omega 3 and omega 6 back in 1929 and 1931. So, it's been a minute,
Mind
right?
blowing. Mind blowing.
Sense it. So something we need, our bodies absolutely need, and yeah, excited to talk about it.
Well, I'm just fascinated by this product, and I've been taking it myself now for about 2 months, so we can talk about that as well. As you know, and I think most of our listeners probably know, I'm a dermatologist, of course, board certified dermatologist and board certified laser surgeon. But as of recently, my daughter graduated with her master's in biochemistry and nutrition, and I've been nerding out with her throughout all of her studies on nutrition and overall health and things that I think maybe our medical system maybe is not doing well. And so I'm actually getting a third board certification in integrative health and anti-aging medicine. So I am fascinated by supplements and nutrition and all of the things that we can use as preventative medicine and to help ourselves, even before we get a disease. But even those patients who are already suffering from metabolic dysfunctions and things like that, how they can benefit from these. When I heard about Fatty 15, I completely lost my mind. It is such an incredible thing. It has so many health benefits. So I'm just going to throw that out to you. Tell us what are some of the key health benefits of it, and why does it work the way it does?
Right. Yeah. It was, the discovery, Dr. Missy, of C15, as this essential fatty acid, was an accident. I'm a veterinary epidemiologist, and I was working for the Navy, and helping continually improve the health and welfare of their aging dolphins. So, completely different world where this all started and came from. But dolphins do have gorgeous skin, I have
They
to
do.
say.
They're beautiful creatures. They
And
do indeed.
how do they do that in salt water, no less?
Right.
Keep that gorgeous skin. And the Navy has cared for this large population of dolphins for over 60 years. And I was brought in to help understand dolphin aging because the Navy does such a good job taking care of their dolphins that while in the wild dolphins live to about 20 years old, at the Navy they are routinely living 30, 40, 50, even now to 60 years old.
Okay.
So, over about a 10-year period, we were seeing that some of these older dolphins, Dr. Missy, were getting developing things that sound really familiar, right? Like high cholesterol and chronic inflammation, fatty liver disease, this whole metabolic, a lot of these metabolic changes that, we're talking about, and even the full suite of changes consistent with Alzheimer's. And yet, there were other aging dolphins in the population that were aging perfectly healthfully and not developing these.
Wow.
So, what we did is we applied an advanced technology called metabolomics. And right, this is where we get to nerd out. And we looked at thousands of small molecules to predict which small molecules in their all fish diet and in the dolphins' archived blood predicted the healthiest aging dolphins. We thought it would be omega 3s because all they eat are fish. And lo and behold, C15, which I had never even heard of, popped up to the top of the list, and
Wow.
brought us that first clue.
That is amazing. So talk to us about who knew that dolphins could teach us so much, but
I
Navy
know.
dolphins even more special. So tell us what is so special about C-15? What is it doing? What is it similar to or dissimilar to in our bodies?
So, what we've learned about C15 since that initial discovery, first, that the same relationship exists in people. So, people who have higher C15, just like in the dolphins, are less likely to develop type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, heart disease, a myriad of different conditions. So, we see these parallel associations. So, then what we did is we took the pure C15 molecule and then we moved it into the lab. And that's where we really got to the meat of, to answer your question, which is like, how does it work and what does it do? And so, what we learned is that as an essential fatty acid, which means it's a nutrient that our bodies must have at certain levels just to maintain our baseline health. And if we have levels below that, our cells physically fall apart. So C15's primary role is it serves as basically a stabilizer of our cell membranes. So it helps to, it's a sturdy fatty acid. It's not susceptible to lipid peroxidation. So it helps our cells really in a simple way stay stable and resilient against early breakdown. And this includes skin cells, liver cells, heart cells, brain cells. It's actually a trick that evolution has used for millions of years to help, for example, humans live longer than mice in the
It's
first place.
amazing. So
So that
amazing.
so by doing that, it also repairs mitochondria. It taps into six hallmarks of aging, of what defines how we age at the cellular level. It naturally activates these receptors called PPAR alpha and delta, which are known orchestrators of our balancing our metabolism and our immunity. And the last thing I'll brag about C15 is that it's also a JAK-STAT, an HDAC inhibitor. JAK-STAT inhibitor being really important from a skin standpoint because these are activities that help calm things down. I myself had atopic dermatitis and autoimmune issues, and that mechanism of C15 has been has greatly improved my quality of life.
Well, I just find it incredible, and, as a dermatologist, when I started kind of realizing what C-15 was doing, I'm like, "Wow, there are so many medications, actual pharmaceutical drugs now that are, JAK-STAT pathway inhibitors that we're using for everything from alopecia areata to atopic dermatitis to psoriasis." So many of these inflammatory, quote, unquote, "autoimmune disorders," you know, we still don't know full on root causes for them. Some of it's genetic, some of it's dry skin, so on and so forth. But uh, maybe it's also a slight deficiency in C-15 that is causing this to happen to these people. So I'm ecstatic for it, not only for overall health and skin wellness and skin beauty and anti-aging, but my goodness, it treats everything. Skin, heart, liver, everything. It's amazing.
Right, and exactly. It's like, and when we hear about that, it's just okay. This sounds too good to be true. And
It
what is this
kind of
all about?
does, right?
And and it really gets down to it's an essential fatty acid, and there are only three before this discovery. There were two. There are only three essential fatty acids. So there's not a lot, but nature has made a very small number of things, and including vitamins, are essential. Vitamins that we need, our essential minerals. This just goes in that bucket in which nature has found a way to use C15 in many ways just to keep us balanced. And when we come to understand that our primary source is C15, even though the dolphins were getting their C15 from certain types of fatty fish, our primary source of C15 is by far is dairy fat. And so as we've taken down our population-wide decreases in dairy fat, Dr. Missy, what we've seen is population-wide decreases in C15, getting to the point now where most of us are sitting on this precarious threshold of nutritional C15 deficiency, what's called cellular fragility syndrome. It's the first nutritional deficiency syndrome discovered in over 75 years. So if you think like vitamin C deficiency and scurvy and vitamin D deficiency and rickets,
Yeah.
right along. So it was like when you think about it, fixing all these things, it makes a lot more sense when it's like more part of a deficiency story. But then on the flip side, we're now learning that we can actually optimize our C15 levels and actually reach like Sardinian blue zone longevity world. So it's
That's
really exciting.
well, as you know, I nerd out on anything that is anti-aging, and that it can reverse, metabolic dysfunction, because I think that's the biggest problem in our country. Is
Hear
so
that?
many
Yeah.
patients are, they're overweight, they don't make insulin, or they're not, responsive. Their body's not responsive to their insulin because of their weight and their metabolic dysfunction. Cholesterol gets out of whack. Everything starts spiraling down from that point. And if your cells are not able to repair themselves and maintain their integrity, how in the world can they ever, fix these things? And it's just going to get worse and worse. So I'm just impressed with the cell membrane strengthening, mitochondrial function. I mean, we hear that, we age and die because our mitochondria fail. That's one of the hallmarks of aging. And so this can actually help boost energy production via the mitochondria as well. I think that's incredible. So what are you said most of our natural sources are from dairy, but really there's not much other ways to get it in our
There's,
diet?
there are like nobody is sitting on zero C15 in their bodies, and now folks like yourself can measure C15 fatty acid panels. You now most of them include C15.
That was something I
Uh,
was curious about. Is that something that you
yeah,
can just order?
you can, and we worked with Genova in addition to develop where Genova Diagnostics has a at-home blood spot test for C15. But Dr. Missy, you can do that in your clinic, and you in a much broader way with other panels. So that's a really nice thing to be able to measure. And so what we've been able to show is that yeah, there are specific levels that we need to reach, and that if we get below that, we develop these deficiency syndromes. So it's nice that we're able to measure it to be able to get up and above
Yeah.
those levels.
Well, that's great, and I love that for a lot of my patients that are maybe coming in that are doing weight loss therapies. We're monitoring their diet. They're meeting with my beautiful daughter for nutrition counseling now as
Oh,
well,
that's
and taking supplements and things that to boost what we see on their lab work. So this is something I really want to add to those panels now, so that we can really track that for people.
yeah.
I will tell you, interestingly, anecdotally, I've been taking this product, gosh, for probably 3 or 4 months now. Since I spoke to you probably a month ago, I've been taking 2 tablets in the morning. I think I had mentioned on our previous call that my arthritis is significantly better since taking it. And I will tell you, the swelling in my joints is completely gone after starting to take it twice a day. And I don't have joint pain at the end of the day after injecting faces all day anymore. So I'm a true believer personally in this product. I haven't gotten my labs checked again just to see, where I am from every other biological marker that I'm tracking on myself. But I can tell you it's made a difference in my arthritis. So talk to me about that.
Right. That was a delight and surprise benefit because all the research we were doing, of course, dolphins weren't telling us about
Their joint
joint
pain.
pain. Right. At least we weren't able to interpret their EEGs. So yeah, when we move forward with saying, gosh, we need to find a way to optimize this fat because if we look at milk fat, for example, there's only 1% of milk fat is C15, and over 40% of the fatty acids in milk fat are these pro-inflammatory fats. So I don't shy away from whole dairy fat, but I experienced the same benefit you did, Dr. Missy, with just improved, but I didn't get improved joint pain from eating cheese,
Right,
right? And
right,
so
and I
so
love cheese, but it never helped me with my joint.
the idea was we worked cooperatively with the Navy because this all came from the Navy to then develop this pure free fatty acid Fatty15 supplement so that we can get just the highly bioavailable concentrated um, C15 that's not having to compete with all the other fats that are present in milk. That also has allowed me personally to get to, like, on average, people are around 0.2% of C15 is what most people are sitting at, which is right at the edge of deficiency syndrome. And I'm proud to say I'm at Sardinian levels of 0.46,
Amazing. Love it.
which is great. So this gets back to the joints. So we know now that C15 helps to lower over 18 pro-inflammatory cytokines in a dose-dependent fashion. So I started with one capsule a day, which is 100 milligrams, and it does a lot. So C15 does a lot of heavy lifting with that dose. It does depend where you start, of course. So it's really good to have that test now, and it helps with all of those metabolic balancing, benefits that we talked about. I hit menopause, and I started getting tennis elbow when I don't play tennis. So the joint, and I never had joint pain. My elbow and my hip started hurting, and I bumped up to 2, and I had that exact same where the joint pain completely went away. So the mechanism behind that almost definitely is due to this anti-inflammatory component. There are a couple studies, early studies, showing that C15 decreases the damage and inflammation in osteoarthritis. But really, what's been, even if you go to our site at fatty15.com and you go to the reviews, and there's a search bar and you just put in joints, it's probably one of the most enthusiastic benefits, because it changes your quality of life,
Well,
especially for you, right?
I
Absolutely.
tell you, I mean, that has been my fear. My mother has horrible osteoarthritis. I've started her on this product as well too, so we're gonna see. Hopefully, she's gonna get some release. But she's got terrible, already disfigured, hands, and I can't imagine being able to run lasers and do injectables if I progress to that level. So it's been terrifying me. So I feel so much better, and I think this is gonna give me some more longevity in my career, hopefully. So I'm very excited about it,
I think
from
that
that standpoint.
your patients are probably pretty happy about
I
that
I
too.
hope they wanna keep me around. That's the goal, is to try to keep me around a little bit. So I was also really fascinated, by some of the studies that you brought to our attention. I take rapamycin, sirolimus, because am very much on that longevity train, trying to live as long as I can. But talk to me about the study that shows what happens when you take C15 versus
Right.
that.
So as we were, more and more of the studies were coming out from us, but and from others throughout the world on this myriad of C15's benefits, and its role as an essential fatty acid. One of our co-founders, Dr. Nicholas Shork, he is head of NIH's Longevity Consortium, and he's played that role for like 15 years. And so Nick knows all of the longevity enhancing compounds, where they're at, the promise, how they act, and all of those things. And Nick was looking at C15, and he's like, Steph, he's like, I bet C15 is going to pan out as a geroprotector, which, is core in the longevity space, because the point of a geroprotector is to actually slow our process of aging, so that it takes longer for us, we can stave off the development of chronic diseases, which then help us live longer,
Correct.
and have a higher quality of life
Right.
in the meantime.
Yeah, not
So
necessarily live longer, but even just live better while you're living,
that's right, be able to
healthier.
live while you're living,
Yeah.
yeah. So what we did was, so Nick is like, oh, we should test it against the top longevity enhancing compounds. So we used a panel and that was done by a independent third party, called Biomap, and it's these 12 human cell systems that mimic various disease states. So it mimics inflammation and heart disease and autoimmune diseases and metabolic disease. And what they do with the system, this is commonly used by pharma companies to assess efficacy and safety and dose. And what you do is you treat each of these diseases in a dish with 4 different concentrations of your compound. So for us, it was Fatty15, C15. And it measures 146 different clinically relevant biomarkers to see, like, all right, let's see what it does. So we did that, but for C15, but we also did that for rapamycin, metformin, and acarbose. So three leading longevity picks. And what we found, Dr. Mizzi, was that C15 had the most clinically relevant cellular benefits, longevity enhancing benefits of all three, very close to rapamycin. So C15 had, Fatty15 had 36 benefits. Rapamycin had 32, so right behind it. Metformin was about half of those, and then acarbose was at the end, and it's not acarbose's fault because its job isn't really at the cellular level. It decreases the absorption of carbs at the gut, so
A
its
little
job
different. Little
isn't yeah,
different.
exactly. So it was fun to see when you step back and you look at C15 and and rapamycin. There are some remarkable similarities, right? That they both have anti-fibrotic, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, antioxidant, and antifungal, so antimicrobial properties. It ends up C15 has all of those: antifungal, antimicrobial,
And
anti-cancer,
more.
antioxidant,
And
and
more.
more.
Yeah.
And it's safe. It's what every mammal gets at birth. So it's like this is something we meant to have to support our longevity. We also know that just like rapamycin, C15 inhibits mTOR, so it has the same mechanism, but in a way that's not um, like it's great, that something was found on Easter Island, being created by bacteria. That was the rapamycin that has these remarkable benefits, but it wasn't what our bodies have evolved to have. It
Correct.
was like an added surprise that we could tap into. In comparison, C15 is just like, well, no, this is our bodies were made to use
This
C15.
is the more natural type of product to increase that
Yeah,
longevity. So it's
yeah.
very, very fascinating. So talk to us, just for our listeners out there who are hearing, fatty, and we think omega, fatty acids when we hear fatty. So talk to us about fatty 15 when you are also thinking about omega 3s and omega 6s. Tell us where does it fit in?
Sure. Well, it's a great question. So they're all fatty acids. So they all fit in the world of, if we talk about dietary nutrients, with regard, we have fats, right? We have our lipids, we have our carbs, and we have our proteins. So this is fatty acids all fit within the lipid category. And within fatty acids, we know that there are different categories. So within fatty acids, there are unsaturated fats and saturated fats. And unsaturated fats, these categories are dictated by the chemical structure.
Hmm.
So remember our little sticks and balls with the putting
The
together
bonds,
the
yeah.
molecular. Yeah, maybe that probably doesn't exist anymore, but
Oh
um,
gosh, I hope it does. That we may be dating ourselves a little bit there,
I know,
huh?
maybe a little bit, maybe a little bit. But so the unsaturated fatty acids have that title because both of them have a series of carbons, but the bonds between those carbons in unsaturated fats include a double bonds. And double bonds are good because it allows for flexibility. Think of it like a hinge or a bending point for that carbon chain. So that's good. The downside is that those double bonds are susceptible to oxygen attack, which is why unsaturated and polyunsaturated fatty acids have multiple double bonds. So it just means this is why they're oils at room temperature. This is why if you leave them out in exposed to oxygen, they go rancid. All of those things is because of these double bonds. In contrast, fatty 15 and C15 is a saturated fat, and so it has no double bonds, which means it is very resistant to lipid peroxidation, and that's where it serves its stabilizing function in its cell membranes. But then we've been all taught that all saturated fats are bad, and
Right?
that's where now the world it is unquestionable because there's been so many studies done way beyond us that if you look at the saturated fat category, there are even chain saturated fatty acids and odd chain saturated fatty acids. And odd is based upon odd number of carbons, 15, C15, and even chain is like C16, C18. So what we're used to hearing about are the even chain saturated fats, which are pro-inflammatory, higher levels associated with a higher risk of type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, heart disease. On the flip side, these odd chain saturated fats, these little underdogs, are C15s not only essential, but does the opposite, right? Lower is anti-inflammatory, lower risk of type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease. So when we got rid of dairy, we asked kind of, and we said no more saturated fats. Even to this day, we should reduce our intake of all saturated fats. We're taking out the bad
We're
ones, but
taking out the good ones too.
we're taking out the good ones too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So fascinating. So do people still need to take omega-3s?
I think they work together. So think of them as the yin and yang. That I wouldn't say, oh, we discovered vitamin C, so you don't need to take vitamin A. So these are all essential nutrients. What we do as we get older, our bodies and cells have a higher susceptibility to getting oxidized, so attacked by oxygen.
Right.
So especially as we get older, getting that C15, because our C15 levels go down not only because of diet, but because of age, keeping those C15 levels up high to help balance out the oxidative risk of the omegas, it becomes increasingly important. And for the omegas, because of this oxidative risk, we really recommend get your omega-3s from fish, and from the diet, because they're it's just the molecule is so sensitive that when you take it and you put it in fish oil and then you put it in a capsule and then you put it in a bottle, it's just
You're losing the efficacies to a
you're
degree, I'm
losing
sure.
it. You're
Yeah.
just and it's not the manufacturer's fault. It's just a really fragile molecule,
Yeah.
and we don't have that issue with regard to C15 just because it is so wonderfully stable. So omega-3s, yes, ideally from your food. And then we developed fatty 15 so you could get just the good saturated, odd chain saturated fat without the even. So it was all a very methodical, thought through process that the Navy, Office of Naval Research funded almost all of this work to be able to
Well,
deliver the
Steph, we
supplement.
we owe you and the Navy and the Dolphins a lot, so
Oh, well,
thank
the
you.
dolphins for
I love
sure.
dolphins even more now.
Oh, that's great.
That's great. So anything that we didn't cover that you really want our listeners to know about Fatty 15?
I think just helping to keep the conversation going. It's very few people know about, despite the abundance of data, and that we've been working on this for 10 years. The rest of the world has. There's if you go to discoverc15.com, this is where we're trying to keep it as up to date as possible with all the peer-reviewed research on C15. There is so much out there, Dr. Macy, and you saw it. Like
Well,
once you
I'm
said, you're like,
ecstatic about it. That's why I
right?
have it
And
at my clinic. I think everyone should take it. I'm trying to help you get the word out, my dear.
yeah, and so it's all about, so now it's about awareness and then trying it, that we have a 95% monthly retention rate because people, when they take it, they get this delight surprise of feeling better. And there's a whole nother level of science that now helps explain why there are these added benefits of deeper sleep. We talked about less joint pain and calmer mood. I mean, these are so critical to our mental health and wellness. That is a big reason why when people do try Fatty 15, about half of them feel those benefits within 2 weeks.
Yeah, I would say
So,
I think that's true in my patient experience, in my personal experience as well. So I just want to thank you so much for taking the time today to come and talk about this wonderful product with us. And we will continue to trying to get the word out. And for our listeners, if you are interested in Fatty 15, if you're interested in wellness and anti-aging, and what you can do not only for the longevity of your skin, but your whole person's longevity and your overall health, please join us at Premier Dermatology and Aesthetics. We would love to have a consultation with you about it. And Steph, thank you for joining us. And listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of All Things Skin.